Phoebe, we are live.
Good morning. Good afternoon. Good afternoon, especially for Verity. Good morning for Linda. And good evening, everyone. Tonight is a special night. We have two special guests in the person of our world champion for public speaking 2021 Verity Prize and Linda Marie Miller, second place 2020. We are so honored to have them both in one stage. This is in preparation for our celebrating women leadership. While both of them are really good speakers, public speakers, world-renowned, they know that they have their own leadership skills that we want to know, their secrets, because behind their being public speakers are the secrets in how they became one of the champions. One of the things I've learned in leadership is that the fly, lead your first, lead yourself. And I believe they did that while they were preparing for their speech for the world champion. I believe that, like Verity, have been preparing her speech for months. I would believe that she has prepared way back then. I have been following her and her story, the years, been able stages. We would like to know and hear their story, how they have been able to lead first in their purpose and where they are in the community. They have marked themselves as leaders. Let's hear from them. May I hear from them being able to be a champion? Verity?
I just missed the last piece there, Phoebe, just if you can repeat exactly because you broke up.
Oh, yeah. There are various paradigms in leadership. One of the paradigms is lead yourself first before you can lead others. And I believe you have been leading yourself. As I've said, I've been following you up since the time I got to know you as a champion. I've learned, you said you prepared for 7 months intensively for your being a champion. But I believe you have been a leader of yourself way back then. I remember when you were a teenager, you started leading yourself. We want to hear it directly from you, how you took leadership of yourself. Thank you.
Thank you, Phoebe. And what a beautiful place to start. First, lead yourself. That truly for me has been my biggest lifelong journey, because I was not always leading myself. I was always hoping someone else would show me the way, someone else would save me. Certainly as a young woman, I was trying to make it into the music industry. And for a long time, I somehow thought I would get discovered singing in the shower. Although, to be honest, I don't know if you want to get discovered by someone who walks into your bathroom while you're singing. But I was waiting for the opportunities to come to me. And I started really suffering from depression and anxiety and frustration, which I don't think I'm alone in feeling. And it took having to wake up the hard way. And if you've seen my world champion speech, you'll know the role that both my mother and father played in my life, of really putting the ownership back on me. This is your life. How do you want it to look? How are you going to take responsibility for it? And so in the music industry, I eventually stopped complaining. I started getting creative. I sat down with my sister Kay, and we came up with a crazy idea to ask people to buy my first album before I recorded it. And I ended up becoming a crowdfunder. And instead of becoming famous for singing, which was the intention, I became famous for thinking differently. And I was able to start leading others in the ability to think differently about their problems. But I could only be that authority. I could only stand on a stage as a keynote speaker or as a facilitator because I'd traveled that journey. I had innovated myself. I had faced failure. I had found a way to overcome it. And then I was able to impart what I'd learned back to others. So for me, that's where my leadership journey started, was actually in the music industry, when I stopped complaining and I started getting creative. And I think when we tap into our innate creativity, that's when we not only lead ourselves forward, but we lead others with us.
Thank you so much. That is very interesting. I was so fascinated when I was reading your journey way back from traveling to the US, finding yourself, and eventually finding yourself in competing. And I really love your story. Thank you for teaching us to write another story if you don't like your story. I really love that. Thank you. And I'm sure DTM Linda has a story to tell. I believe you have just been 2 years in Toastmasters and you turned out to be the second placer in World Champion of Public Speaking. But I read through your bio and I was so impressed with the way how you developed yourself into who you are right now. Would you like to share your journey in self-leadership?
Sure. But first, I am not a DTM. So people think, assume that, but I'm not a DTM. When I entered the contest, I was a Toastmaster for 4 months, I think, like 4 months. So I just did it. I didn't even know it was more than one thing. I thought it was just one contest, the area contest, and I thought that was the end of it. So I learned along the way that it was a bigger deal than I thought it was. But for leadership, for me, is all through my teachers, and my teachers are my kids. I was, when I was growing up, I was a finance exec. I've retired now, but I was a finance exec for 4 decades. So I always was successful, was very successful, competing in the man's world. I did really, really well. And I decided in my 30s, I wanted to have a child. So, and I envisioned how when my daughter was born, I would teach her everything she needed to know about, being independent, not needing a man, how to use a credit card, how to be a successful businesswoman, all of that stuff. And I look back and I say this, I say the universe, God, whoever is in control of things, looked down at me and said, you think you know anything? You don't know anything. I'm sending you a teacher. So he sent me my daughter, and she was severely handicapped. She didn't eat my mouth. She didn't walk till she was 10. She didn't speak. She used sign language, although she did say mama once or twice. But she was my greatest teacher about what's really important, because when you're a mom and you have a baby that pulls itself up in the coffee table and takes a few steps when they're a year old, it's a big deal, and you call grandma and take a couple pictures. But when your child struggles and learns to walk at 10 years old independently, it's a much bigger deal. And she really taught me what was important. And because I wanted a normal child as well, I adopted, when she was 4 years old, I adopted a normal, healthy baby boy who was diagnosed with Tourette's when he turned 5. So I had 2 children with issues, very different issues, but they both, as a combination, were my Buddhas. They taught me, they were my teachers, and they had me really grounded in what's important in life and what isn't important in life. So that's when I started becoming a leader, is when I was becoming being a giver to my kids instead of a taker in the world. And that translated over into my work as well. So I think until I was 40, I was probably a pretty horrific leader. Although I had a lot of staff, most of them were afraid of me. They produced a lot, but they were afraid of me. So because I was all about the results, and I was all about making money for big companies and not about people in their lives. So that my transition happened by the time I was 40, maybe 42. And at that point, I started just caring about the people that worked for me and holding them up and being being kind of the wind beneath their wings, and sometimes encouraging them to leave the company when I found them other jobs for more money and better situations for them later on elsewhere. So that's it. So for me, leadership is all about who you're leading. It doesn't have anything to do with yourself. And I learned that from my kids.
Wow, that's amazing. It is so interesting to know that we can lead others first with the passion, perseverance, and persistence that you have. And that is really, really amazing. And that has shown emerge in your speech on how you have dealt with other people. I was having goosebumps when I was listening to your speech. And I see that now I understand better when I learned about how you have dealt with your own children. That in itself is a training ground for leadership where you develop passion and empathy. And that has been very interesting to know further and explore further. You may be able to come up with your own theory of leadership, putting together all the paradigms in leadership. That we know that through these years, we have been able to encounter our past international presidents. We have Pauline Shirley, who was our past president in 1994 to 1995. And we have Jana Barnell, 2008, 2009, Pat Johnson, 2010, 2011, and Lark Dolly for our past international president, 2018, 2019. I was imagining that through those years, they have also grown. And one of the famous models that we discuss in Toastmasters is the growth that each one of us goes through. That's the model of Maslow's hierarchy of needs. I'm sure this is very familiar with Verity being a graduate of psychology. And I want to see and hear further from you how you have been able to put together the model of our hierarchy of needs in terms of growing both as communicators and as leaders using the Maslow's hierarchy of needs. I want to hear it from you both. Verity, please. Thank you.
It's so interesting you bring up the hierarchy of needs, because I've had obviously a very different journey to Linda's. I became a mother in my 40s, in my mid 40s, and I've been very lucky that I had a healthy boy who fits on the normal spectrum. But becoming a mother in your mid 40s, going through IVF and the whole journey that went with that, and then going into lockdown with a baby, I discovered how small your world can become when you go into survival state. And so it was interesting that in that survival state, I decided to what I can only call a speech contest, some level of self-actualization, because you've got to take up a lot of space and put a lot of things on hold to compete. And so it was quite interesting that it was at a time when everything was so uncertain that I actually had the space, even with a small baby, to try and be so focused. And what I learned in that was that's only possible if you've got community around you, if you've got people that believe in you, people that are holding the space for you. I mean, my husband, he had to take on so much, my club, my family, my country, eventually my district. I had that community behind me. And so, in terms of if you're trying to self-actualize, there's a lot of things that have to be in place. Your basic needs do have to be met. But then while there might be a lot of reasons why you can't get to where you're going, I really believe that if we start to leverage the people around us who believe in us, that's when we start to become the best version of ourselves. And my biggest learning at the end of the speech contest was alone I can't, together I can. Or together we can. It's actually an AA slogan that I learned when my mum was going through the Alcoholics Anonymous program. But it really showed me that whatever your hierarchy of needs, it doesn't matter how much you've got in place. If you don't have community, you're never going to become that better version of yourself. So I feel very blessed. And sometimes, we've still in that early days of a new child. We're still sometimes in survival mode, but when we call on community, that's when we get to become the best version of ourselves. That's been my experience the last few years.
That's so interesting. That's so interesting because I find you a person who is so in touch with your own self and in touch with other people, with your family. Thank you for sharing yourself. Linda, can maybe hear from you?
Yeah, this is really amazing because it shows the different paths that people have had, and they don't all have to be the same, because I had nobody. It's like nobody's coming. You're on your own. What are you going to do with this? Which is what the universe sent me, right? That's the lesson I needed. And so my motto is, if it's to be, it's up to me. That's it. Nobody's coming, until I met my amazing husband, who about 17 years ago. Anyway, and he's been my partner ever since. But before that, I was on my own. So, and this is the way I look at it. And if you see what I speak about primarily social justice issues. I take a look around and see things need to change in the world. And I, would wait for someone else to do something about it. And eventually I said, no, if it's to be, it's up to me. Singularly, I don't know how I'm going to do this. I don't know what I'm going to say, but I know I'm going to do something. And even today, I speak about controversial things, and there are many people that say, sit down. A couple people walked out of my speech that I gave in the final stage last year. But I don't speak for those that walk out. I speak for those that aren't heard. And so, and I do that singularly, and I don't ask permission. So sometimes it's met with a little bit of resistance. And my job as a speaker is to put my arms around everybody and create a circle. There's a great poem. It's only 4 lines by Edwin Markham. And it goes like this. He drew a circle to cut me out, a heretic, rebel, a thing to flout. But love and I had the wit to win. We drew a circle that took him in. And that's what I strive to do, is to draw a circle around all of us and find our commonality, and then take a look at each other and say, how can I stand for you and how can you stand for me? And for me, that is self-actualization. That's out on the skinny branches where the juicy juices, where the juicy berries are. So whenever in leadership, I say this, and I'm sure anybody who's been a manager in the world knows this. If your employees get that they matter, like that they matter to you, they will follow you anywhere, to the ends of the earth. They will do anything for you. And for many of them, it's their love language. You don't even need to give them raises. Find out what the love language is for the people that you lead, and then singularly deliver to them exactly what they need to get that they matter, because that's all the world wants. 99.9% of the people walking on this planet this morning, the most successful, the least successful, it doesn't matter. I've coached executive men who don't get that they matter. So if you have people get that they matter, you'll be a magnet and people will follow you.
Yeah, I see that in you, and I see that you have been helping a lot of people. And I wish I were in your fold, trying to learn from you. And what I see in you is the potential for you to be able to develop your own paradigm, a theory that people can follow your lead. Because I remember a quote saying that if you are following somebody's path, maybe you are in the wrong path. Maybe it's time for you to set up some new paradigms, some new leads, and that will be interesting for us to lead, because I know that you have started your own business in helping people, empowering other people, because you yourself has been empowered, and you were bringing something in line with the 5 levels of leadership, which I learned from one of the famous authors in leadership, John Maxwell, who mentioned about the 5 levels of leadership that would start from position, where people assert their right, and then permission, where people will have to build on their relationship, and then the production, the results of their work, and then people development. I see you have focused yourself in people development. I also see that And Verity, I was so touched when you shared your assistant who is doing your artwork. Wow, that was amazing. I said, wow, it's so good to be working with Verity because she gives importance to the people who work for her. And not only saying that I have achieved all this, but she was giving honor to those who have contributed to her success. So with these levels of leadership, I see that in you. Which one is more important for you? Position, permission, production, people development, and the pinnacle of it would be respect of others. In your own experience, delivering your leadership skills, which do you think, which hierarchy would you go in terms of building the people under you?
Linda, do you want to kick off? Do you want me to kick off? Is that for me? I'm not sure.
I'm not sure. I think it was for you, Verity.
Oh,
If
is
you
it
want
for
me,
me? Okay, perfect. You know what, Phoebe, my place that I'm passionate about is the people development part. And if I had to add another P, it would be purpose. It would be, why are we doing this? Why does it matter? And what Linda Marie was saying, you know, that people see they matter, but also that they see what they're doing matters. And I really believe that. And I work in organizations across so many levels. And it's very rare that you get to walk into an organization where everyone has a sense of purpose and they understand that their piece matters. You know, whether they're cleaning the toilets or they are the CEO, do they know what role they play in what they stand for and what their business does? And so the piece under that is the people development. And I'm very lucky I get to work with graduate schools of businesses, working with young leaders, helping them first to understand themselves so that they can understand other people and then understand how to develop other people around them. And it's probably the hardest piece. So it's very easy to focus on process and production and profit. And that's kind of what business schools teach us. But when we learn how to work with other people and how to see the potential in someone where maybe it's not obvious to everyone, I think that's the hardest leadership capability. There's always the thing of you can see the problem or you can see the potential in someone. And when we make it our effort to go, this person's difficult for me and they're not showing up the way I need them, can I build a connection to find their potential and to tap into their purpose and maybe get more out of them? That's when I believe leadership really becomes a challenge, because it's always easier to notice the pitfall and walk away. But I always go, I want to be the leader who sees the potential. I haven't always. I've sometimes not put that effort into developing a person because they were a problem on a team and I took the easy way out, which was not to empower them, not to talk to them, not to have the hard conversation. But every time I've reminded myself to have the difficult conversation and to connect with their development and their purpose, that's when everything changes.
Wow, that's great. When you say purpose, is it quite related to vision and mission of the person, personal vision, or for the company's vision?
I think it's that personal mission of why. Why are you passionate about this? Why does it matter to you? Why do you get up in the morning? And when people can connect with their personal purpose, it can filter into everything they do.
I love that. Thank you so much. Very nice. Thank you. Linda. Linda Marie would like to hear from you.
yeah. So for me, it's about passion and what are your passions in life. And when and as a manager or as a leader, getting creative to help people manifest what their passion is in their life. I had an employee that was getting ready to retire, but she didn't have enough in Social Security to live on, so she wanted to work part-time. I had another employee that had just had a baby and she just come back to work and she was crying all day because she didn't want to be at work all day separated from her child, but she had to because they had bills and she needed to help contribute. So we created one job for these two people because they both worked in the same department. So one would come in and work until noon and the other one would come in at noon and literally sit at the same desk. They didn't have two different jobs. They worked the very same desk, the same job. So they were under normal circumstances here in the United States, they'd have to go find something else to do, maybe be a, checkout clerk making less money or something. So they were able to stay at the company with the benefits that they had and be able to, we got creative because it was their purpose and their passion to either retire or to be a mother. So I think if leaders work with, find out again, whatever is the passion or what the people that work for you or that follow you want, you can create anything you want. Someone told me once, one of my mentors once said that if you think you're a leader, you think you're leading people, but nobody wants to follow you, you're just out taking a walk by yourself. And, we have leaders who just say, I'm the head of this department. I'm the head of this company. I am the leader. You're not a leader unless people want to follow you. So that's the most important thing, finding out what their passion is. And for me, that's where Toastmasters comes in, because my motto is all the world to stage. And anytime you open your mouth, you are either increasing your influence or diminishing your influence in the world. And it doesn't matter if you're a CEO or if you're the receptionist, all the world's a stage. And speaking and communicating effectively is the number one key, most important asset that you have, is how you speak. And it doesn't matter if you're having a meeting with your team or pitching an idea to your boss or delivering financial results to the board. It all comes down to how you communicate it. So to me, that's purpose. So purpose and passion, I think, are the two P's, finding out what people's purpose is. And it can shift over time, right? If you have someone that you are leading for a period of time, I don't even really like the term managing or leading my team. It's more, I'm just a support for whatever they need. I work for them, basically. I support them. And when you do that for people, then you will be you'll have the most production, you'll have the best department, and people will sit around trying to figure out how you did that. But again, it's all about having people get that they matter and being in service to them. Service leadership, I guess you'd call it.
Yes, thank you so much. I could feel deep inside you, you're both leaders, managers, whose aim is to serve others. And when I was going through the leadership pathways, and there are several styles of leadership, when I look at it, I was wondering why servant leadership is not part of the lists of the styles of leadership in Toastmasters. But I find and met a number of Toastmasters who are into servant leadership and have been fan of Robert Greenleaf, who authored Servant Leadership. And I was a young person, young professional. I have that, and I have seen in you, both of you, to be servant leaders. How are you able to develop the paradigm, able to bring it out in your employees or your people you work with? There are a number of principles that we use in servant leadership. I'd like to hear from you what is evident in your own servant leadership practice.
Do you want me to go first? Go ahead, Verity.
Yeah, you go first. We'll swap
All
it
right.
up.
Okay. All right. I'll go first. So this is the key for me. In order to have people get that they matter and serve them, you have to create an emotionally intimate relationship with them. And then you have to be vulnerable. You can't say, I've got it all together and you don't, so you need to follow me and I'm going to teach you. Now, sometimes they do learn from me, but for the most part, it's I need you. And until I was in my 40s, I couldn't say those words. I had a very difficult childhood. And I didn't cry. A tear never left my eye from the time I was 15 until I was 42. I never cried because you didn't matter to me. You weren't going to hurt me. And if people don't matter to you and you don't need them because they're going to hurt you in some way or let you down, you become a pretty independent person, but a pretty shut off person. And you can't lead people from that place. So being able to say, I need you, you matter to me, and what can I do to support you, requires a level of vulnerability that is more difficult for men than women, but it's also pretty difficult for a lot of women. So I think that's the key. And I apologize, I haven't read all the leadership books that I did go through the dynamic leadership path, but I've, forgotten probably most of that. So I'm sorry if I'm not in alignment with what's in, in popular theory out there, but I think that's it. I think it's vulnerability, and being vulnerable with people will get them to the point you're talking about.
It's amazing because even if you have not completed the leadership pathways, but you've been able to encapsulate them. Thank you for sharing your point of view. Yes, Verity. Maybe this is the last question because I believe Verity has another appointment. Thank you.
I always, this idea of servant leadership is so powerful to me, but then sometimes I go, do I fully understand it? Because it feels like it's the ideal. It's the ideal to be serving the people that you lead, and we don't often see that. I often work on my own. I've been lucky enough to serve in Toastmasters. That's my one experience of really working with teams because I run my own business. And I think for me, if I had to look at that term, servant leadership, it's around, if you care about what's in it for everyone else, then it becomes about the experience that other people are going to have, and how can I as a leader ensure they have the best possible experience. But often that was being driven by my own needs not being met before I got given a leadership position. And so I always say to people, like, if you're complaining about something, and Linda, you were talking about this earlier, like, well, if, it has to be me, if it's not changing, how can I be part of the change? And my journey in Toastmasters was that I was one of the members who would sit at the back of the room complaining that at our speech contests, there was always speakers from an area that weren't included because they were 900 kilometers away and it was too far for them to come. And so when I got put into leadership position of being a division director, I thought, well, am I going to complain about it, or am I going to get creative? And there, my job was to sell a vision to my division that we would have that area at our division contest for the first time. They lived in another country. They lived in Namibia. We were in Cape Town at the bottom of South Africa. And that, for me, it didn't feel like servant leadership. It just felt like, this is wrong. Let's get excited about changing it. And it was probably my biggest success and the thing I'm proudest of in my entire Toastmasters journey, actually more so than winning the World Championship, was having a division contest where 9 members from Namibia got on a bus because we'd raised the money and they all came down. And that year, our division winner was the speaker from Namibia. And so it was so much about the member experience, who's missing out, how do we change this? And so that's the place I'm always coming from. And if that's seen as serving, then I'm very happy, but it's also self-serving because I didn't want them not to be there. So I really, for me, it comes back to, Linda's been talking about it, purpose and passion. I think if leaders come from that place and they're really excited and they're taking people on that journey, that's when change happens. So have a bigger picture and make it about making sure that everyone's having the best possible experience. And then I think you're going to lead from a place where good things can happen.
Wow. I'm so honored to facilitate our conversation this evening here in the Philippines. And good morning to Linda. Afternoon for Verity. I'm so blessed as I hear directly from you how you perceive, or how was your own, or how have you been as a leader. And I believe that both of you have been nurturant. You have shown your leadership skills among the people that you work with, and you have conquered your trials and triumphs. These are also the characteristics of our past international presidents, the women presidents, and I see that very excellent examples for those of us who are just starting. So we are going to face you all, women leaders, and our past international presidents will be with us on March 4. You are all women of wonders. We nurture, she leads, she conquers, and all this. We will have all the 4 presidents on March 4 And I hope you can join us on March 4th. We are going to give you the information, and we hope other people or other Toastmasters friends can join us in our celebration of the women in leadership. And we are so honored to have you showcase your own leadership style. And it's very personal. And I wish to read your books in the future in terms of your own leadership, because I find it really uniquely yours. Thank you so much, world champion Verity and Linda Marie, for being with us. Love you much.
Thank
You
you.
have enlarged my love for you both. Thank you so much. Thank you. And I wish to learn from you more. Thank you so much. Thank you so much, Gayatri.